Good evening, everybody. Welcome to City Hall. I'm Ian Price. I'm a researcher in Alex's team. So I'd like to welcome you to Reform's first event at City Hall. And so it's very informal this evening, just talks. I think you'll thank me for no PowerPoint at all. Just that's it. That's our one PowerPoint slide. Just people talking. So without further ado, I'd like you to introduce you to our Reform group leader on the London Assembly, Alex Wilson.
Thank you, Ian, and good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome here to City Hall and to the Reform UK group's first event. So, as Ian said, we are now a group. So you may have heard a week or two ago, I was joined on the Assembly by Keith Prince, who is the Assembly member for Havering and Redbridge, and that means that we now constitute a group of 2 members. One of the happy outcomes of this will be our improved representation on committees. Keith, who sadly couldn't join us tonight because he's at an event in his constituency, but he will sit on the Transport Committee for Reform, which is a position he's held for his previous party, so a lot of knowledge and experience and background, which will help us going forwards into the next challenges and elections. But it's a huge step forward for us as a party because that is a committee that we've not been represented on until now. So why am I holding an event for motorists? Well, you only have to go back 18 months to the campaign for the London Mayor and Assembly elections, and we have our former mayoral candidate here with us, Willcox, to remember that so much of that campaign was fought on the issue of ULEZ and the ULEZ extension in particular. And we attended many anti-ULEZ protests, and I drove the Reform taxi into Trafalgar Square to take part in the protest just before those May elections. And during that experience, I met so many people and listened to so many stories from residents and business owners that were going to be hit very hard by that ULEZ extension. And one story in particular springs to mind. I remember meeting a disabled protester in Orpington, whom I helped load her mobility scooter into the back of her non-ULEZ compliant car. And she told me she needed that car to get to work, but she couldn't afford to upgrade it to avoid the ULEZ charges. Without that, she faced having to leave her job and relying on benefits. And that was just one of so many similar stories that we heard during that campaign. Since being elected as an Assembly member last May, I've continued to listen and have had many meetings with motoring trade bodies across the spectrum of people and businesses that utterly depend on their vehicles. So tonight is in many ways an extension of that process and is an opportunity for me, but also everyone else here, to listen to a number of people that can speak for the experience of motorists in London. We're going to hear from the Alliance of British Drivers, an organisation that represents motorists across Britain. We will also hear from the Motorcycle Action Group about their members' use of London's road space. We will hear, hopefully, if he gets here in time, from the black cab trade, and also a small business owner whose case study for me symbolises the often oppositional relationship between motorists and London's local government, particularly here at City Hall. Then there will also be a chance for questions and discussion, and of course we'll continue talking over the food that we'll be eating later on. So everyone here can offer their stories, their views and their experience of what it's like to drive in London. But there is another reason for holding this event tonight. I want to stand up for London's motorists at a time when it feels as if motoring in our capital city is under siege. Cars are an absolute necessity to so many Londoners, essential to their personal independence and their freedom. This is particularly the case in outer London, where our transport network is much more sporadic than it is in the centre. Car ownership is essential to human flourishing, and I say that as very much a car enthusiast. My own personal love affair with motoring began back in 2002, when, thanks to a small legacy from my grandma, I was able to buy and insure a Daihatsu Sorion. Anyone heard of that? Not a particularly glamorous car, but to me, it was freedom. And it took me around the country to many Colchester United away games before it sadly met the sticky end on the M1 near Northampton. My first car and my first, so far only, write-off. I replaced that with a Vauxhall Corsa. Again, not very exciting. But since then, as older age brought insurance costs down, I've been driving Subarus. And I'm now on both my second Forester, which is ideal for transporting the dogs, and my second Impreza, which is just such fun. Believe it or not, I do currently have a clean licence. My husband Nick has an impressive collection of classic cars, a Rover P6, Reliant Scimitar, and a Daimler Sovereign, and an impressive history of breakdowns to go with them. It's fair to say that we are both definitely petrol heads, and for us petrol is such an important word. I will personally never fall for the electric vehicle scam, and in 3.5 years, hopefully for others, it will simply be a matter of personal choice. So it's therefore as both a car enthusiast and a politician that I feel the need to stand up for motorists, who can be forgiven for feeling that both national and local governments have a foot on their throats. In London, this means both devolved government in the form of the Mayor and TfL and borough councils, some of whom are implementing 20-mile-an-hour zones and low traffic neighbourhoods. Meanwhile, the Westminster government's looming deadline of 2035 for the sale of new petrol and diesel cars is not the way to promote electric vehicles. The use of horses for transport did not die out because owners of horse-drawn vehicles in the early 1900s were prevented by law from buying a new horse to replace their ageing nag. No, cars were simply better, and horses were no longer used, their stables being turned into garages. So whatever replaces cars powered by fossil fuels, whether or not that turns out to be the EV, needs to achieve market dominance because it's better, not because motorists are being prevented by law from sticking with the status quo. In London, the Mayor and Transport for London determine the city's overarching transport strategy. And one would hope that this would focus primarily on a vital dimension of public service, namely running the best possible transport network for Londoners. Part of my job requires me to be critical of the Mayor and TfL, where I feel they are letting Londoners down. And I am indeed highly critical of one aspect of TfL's strategy, which I believe is an example of overreach. An example of our transport authority moving beyond management of a public service and into the business of managing our lives. I'm thinking of something TfL refers to as its active travel plan. If you've not heard of the active travel plan, you may want to note the name and do some research into it. It's not a secret, it's not something I've been alerted to by a whistleblower. It's published in plain sight, very much so. In a nutshell, the active travel plan aims to have 80% of London journeys made by walking, cycling, or public transport by 2041. Let me repeat that. By 2041, the Mayor's transport strategy incorporates an active travel plan which aims for 80% of all London journeys to be by walking, cycling, or public transport. The first point to make about this is that the public transport category does not include private hire or taxis. Let me come back to that in a moment. For now, I want to look at the impact of that 80% target for journeys made by walking, cycling, or public transport. So in 2023, 63% of journeys were made this way, which means that TfL is actively looking to reduce by almost half the proportion of journeys currently made by car. I don't think anybody would quarrel with a proportionate programme to promote walking or cycling in absolute terms, but this is a clear strategy of, forgive the pun, driving down the number of car journeys. As an aside, the active travel plan also includes some nudges to our behaviour to drive up the walking and cycling part. Let me quote from the Mayor's transport strategy. All Londoners will achieve at least 2 10-minute periods of active travel per day. Now, some of my political opponents in the chamber, as well as my GP, might suggest I would benefit from this strategy being implemented, but is this really what TfL should be concerning itself with? Am I to expect TfL's enforcement officers to make this happen when they're already so busy standing around with their hands tucked in their stab vests, watching fare evaders push through the barriers? Are the enforcement officers going to drag me out of my office upstairs twice daily and frog march me through 10 minutes of active travel? Unfortunately, for London's motorists, this overreaching mindset pervades TfL's plans, particularly when it comes to actively managing down the proportion of journeys taken by car. Taken in isolation, each intervention seems small, although you could argue that £162 million spent this year alone on cycle lanes and 20-mile-an-hour roads is hardly small. What we're seeing is death by 1,000 cuts for motoring in London. First the ULEZ extension, then the Blackwall tunnel tax, then a broadening of programme of motor vehicle suppression under the heading of safer streets, and most recently, the proposal to pedestrianise Oxford Street. In all of this, I'm particularly concerned about the plight of the black cab trade, which has bent over backwards and really embraced electric vehicles. It's worth emphasising that only our black cab fleet is 100% equipped to transport wheelchair users. Only a third of underground stations have step-free access, and this number will never be greater than 50%. When I've asked wheelchair users about buses, they tell me that bus travel is more or less impossible, with the wheelchair bay in buses routinely cluttered with electric scooters and prams, and yet the black cab trade is categorised by TfL as outside the public transport category in their active travel plan. And it is not just being allowed to wither, it is purposefully being managed down. So, if it's not already obvious, I'm very much a strong supporter of London motorists. This has been informed by my own personal experiences and what I've heard on the campaign trail and since being elected to the London Assembly. The purpose of this evening is to hear even more, and so with that in mind, I'd like to welcome our first speaker, Gregory, of the Alliance of British Drivers.
Everybody hear me? Yep. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks very much, Alex, for inviting me, and thanks everybody for coming. The brief I got from Alex and Ian was to come up with some ideas of how we could improve the situation of transport in London for motorised road users, because as he's already pointed out, Mr. Khan, who doesn't seem to be very well disposed towards motorised road users, has a strategy which is more about depressing the use of private mobility than actually encouraging it. I think it would be very helpful for the whole of the London economy if we could actually find somebody to take over from Mr. Khan, who has a more pluralist view of how transport should be run. But no, that's by the by. My own, well, I'll give you a list of points which I think we need to do to improve transport in London. The first thing is we need to depoliticise the Transport for London hierarchy, because they do seem to be very partisan and not at all well disposed, presumably because of their boss, towards motorised road users. The first thing I would do, and this may cause some controversy, I would dismantle the ULEZ zone and the associated charging regime, because it neither improves air quality nor does it improve congestion, accidents, or anything else. There is a gentleman in Scotland who's been looking at this, a guy called John Lamb. You can find him under the Twitter feed at John Fisk Scotland, and he's got quite a lot to say about charging zones in Aberdeen and other places in Scotland. In fact, they were actually compliant before the regulations were even brought in, so there was no real justification for them. And I suspect if you look at the ULEZ zone, that would also be true, especially if you did the second thing, which is to remove all of the infrastructure which is bottling up traffic in the capital, badly phased traffic lights, bus build-outs instead of indents, all these things which slow down the traffic and move it at sort of speeds that are more conducive with a horse and cart wheel than the modern economy. So I would have all of that stripped out. And this would actually improve air quality, and in fact TfL knows that, and I've left some copies out of this leaflet because it shows this report of TfL's actually shows that as you reduce traffic speeds down below 30 miles an hour, emissions actually ramp up almost vertically. So all of the bus lanes and the cycle lanes and the low traffic networks, or whatever they call them this week, and the 15-minute cities, all of this is actually making our air quality worse, and it's totally unnecessary. If we got the infrastructure properly phased and properly built to actually make traffic travel at reasonable, sensible speeds, and base the road safety science on the correct road safety science, the 85th percentile principle, and the Solomon curve. The other thing is this false hierarchy of road users. I don't think it helps to actually put one road user at the top of the pinnacle, because I think road safety is a shared enterprise. You need all road users to be looking after their own safety, and particularly the most vulnerable ones, because they've got the most to lose. So, for me, no class of road users should have priority over any other, except the ones imposed by the road signage locally. The other thing is, it's a wider thing, that the current road safety regime has been consistently failing to cut casualties, and the reason is because they're so obsessed with speed and, as a cause of accidents. But when you actually look at DFT statistics in road casualties Great Britain, what you find is the commonest causes of accidents are all observation and hazard perception. They're failed to look but did not see, failed to judge the path of converging road user. So those represent probably 3/4 of the causes of accident, and illegal speed, which is the one that they're always chasing, is about 5% of accidents. Well, if you devote 95% of your resources to 5% of the accidents, you're not going to improve them. And it requires going back to first principles and actually teaching road users to observe what's going on around them and not spend their time glued to the speedometer, because that actually makes things worse. So yeah, I would like to see a regime that's based on observation, hazard perception and hazard response, which means you've got to have proactive road users who are watching the road around them, and they're not obsessed with what the number is on a piece of tin. The other thing that I'd do is create an independent road accident investigation and prevention board, and I'd people it with professionals from a marine and aviation background, not these muppets who think that the only thing that matters is speed, because then we might actually get some improvement in road safety based on a training, observation, hazard perception approach, rather than just hitting everybody over the head with more and more automated enforcement and lower and no speed limits, which, as I said, economically are, well, they're philistinic. I think that's about all I've got to say. Anybody got any questions?
Well done. Our next speaker is Mark Wilsmore from Motorcycle Action Group. He also runs the Ace Café. Well, if you'd like to come up and give your take on what matters for London's road users, and in particular,
Yeah, first off, thanks to Alex and your assistant Ian for extending the invite, and just to give a little account of myself. So I'm here on behalf of MAG, Motorcycle Action Group, of which I'm a member, the Greater London MAG. I'm not the chairman or the secretary or anything like that, but unfortunately the chair, a guy for the London MAG anyhow, shared the same name as me, another Mark, couldn't make it this evening and asked if I could come along here. So it's living in North London, it's dead easy to get here, so that's why I'm here. And as Alex has already remarked, I've kind of got two hats, in as much that, yes, MAG member for a long, long time, and I have premises which I'm responsible for called Ace Café in North London. Kind of well known, if not notorious, for particularly perhaps motorbikes. I'm going to stay with MAG for the moment, because they do a splendid magazine each month, much better than, I'm afraid, this newsletter, I think. And just to illustrate how much better it is, I shall give you a sample of what's in here. And amongst the heavyweight tomes, there's lots of heavyweight stuff in here. There's a jokes page. There's a couple of wonderful jokes. The police came to my house and said my dog had chased someone on a bicycle. I said, don't be crazy, my dog doesn't ride a bicycle. Quality stuff. Another one. I met a Dalek that was looking for directions home. Asking where he was from, he replied, Devon, mate. I replied, what part, mate? He replied, Exeter, mate. Exeter, mate. Exeter, mate. Blah, 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 blah. But yes, hopefully you will look up MAG, a Motorcycle Action Group. There's lots and lots of stuff there in MAG, lots of things to fight about and whatnot. But I will give Alex stuff here, because it's proposals for TfL's Vision Zero Action Plan 2 as a gift from MAG. It's online, but yes, it's definitely glasses wearing stuff, and probably for your colleague Ian to digest, and hopefully that will be of use. But prior to coming here this evening, I spoke to Mark, the chair chap at MAG London, and he asked him to do a page of bullet points to bring to this meeting. And regrettably, he gave me a page, it's 5 pages of bullet points. The sum of which is this. And as I get to the right page, which is the back page, I'll add my own observations. A motorcyclist since my teens, and I'm 68. I've managed to somehow survive to 68. So I'll say I'm quite an expert rider about London. No London. I've ridden a lot in Europe, quite a bit in America. I know the NHS inside out as a consequence, because I'm not the best of riders, which reminds me about Keith Prince. I've met Keith Prince a number of times, since which time he's come to join your party. And Keith Prince, as some of you may or may not know, is a motorcyclist. That's the context. I've met him before with MAG stuff. But I can actually say, and I would say if he was here, that he's clearly not a very good motorcyclist, because he's put himself in hospital in Lake Aberdeen. I haven't. I have not managed to go back to hospital other than the things that happen to old men. As you get older, these things come back. But yes. So I can only think to suggest that you don't listen to Keith and his advice about motorcycling. But on a rather more serious note, about MAG and the observations, of which I absolutely agree with these observations. And it's headed, it's not very wisely headed in my view, but I'll read it to you. The political angle for Reform UK. Working people issues. There are thousands of delivery riders. Bullet point. Motorcycles are affordable transport for tradespeople, NHS staff, workers. And you may or may not know, yes, there are plumbers with bikes with all the kit on them. There are electricians and all these top boxes, etc. Whiz about London. Double standards out there. Bicycles, they've been welcomed, they're given infrastructure, and they're allowed almost everywhere, it seems. Motorcycles, no, they're blocked from LTNs. It's inconsistent across bus lanes, and parking's been removed. Yet motorcycles and bicycles have a similar footprint, similar vulnerabilities, and certainly when it comes to cars, often they're lower emissions than the older cars. As much as I love classic cars and whatnot, yes, you can get coughing behind some of those, particularly. I think, is it your husband?
My husband, Nick, at the back, he has 3.
You've got 3, including Jack.
Yeah, well, they know, yeah.
Because I always recall them as smoky things. Lovely when they're new, but eventually the motor gets very smoky. Sorry, I've been rocking about Jags and things. And staying with these evidence versus ideology. Current policies driven by anti-car, anti-vehicle ideology. Motorcycles caught in the crossfire despite being arguably part of the solution. They're space efficient, emission efficient, congestion reducing, etc. And I'll stay with that anti-car, anti-vehicle thing, because it was Boris who, if I recall correctly, that started all this, really, with endeavouring to design out from planning consents all the way through to the widths of roads and widths of footpaths, designing out the private ownership of vehicles, in essence. There's a right to choose. Well, right to choose. Yes, there is a right to choose, but practical and affordable transport. And I think that's the key bit. We tend to perhaps overlook that why cars caught on. I think it's motorcycle sales after World War II just went up and up and up. As kids, then the dominant lump of society, a booming, huge exploding demographic, the biggest demographic explosion in the Western world. This side of the Atlantic, kids had a bit of work, and a bit of money. They went out and bought the fastest thing they could afford. That was a motorbike. Other side of the Atlantic, exactly the same dynamics at work. Baby boom, work, bit of money. They could go out and afford to buy the fastest thing they could afford was a car. In America, there's this car boom over here, driven by youngsters. Over here, it's a bike boom. And the peak of motorcycle sales UK is 1959. And it's that year that a bike came out called the Triumph Bonneville, quite revolutionary in its day, and a carburettor on each barrel, so it's very quick off the lights. And have in mind that the bikes then got replaced effectively by cars as they got cheaper and cheaper. So by 1969, more and more people had cars. And what I'd like to see actually is think of deregulation. Is the speed limit's deregulated? Why not deregulate the speed limits on the North Circular, which is a road I travel daily and see people go past me in electric scooters and things faster than I'm doing on national speed limit, 40 miles an hour. Asks for bus lane, yes, access across all London boroughs. Motorcycles would love to have access to all of them. At the moment it's only TfL. Some boroughs you can, other boroughs they won't. Default motorcycle access through the LTNs, secure motorcycle parking. The gig economy, proper training, because there's no training behind them. And a lot of the kids doing the Uber deliveries and all the rest of it, they may be offered training, ostensibly, but then they have to sign off to say they don't want to do it. So they wind up with no skills at all, and they've signed a disclaimer that they don't want to train. One set of rules across all London boroughs. Yes, I'll send this on to Alex and Ian so they can read and digest at their leisure. For the magazine, though, you have to be a member of the magazine. So for the rest of the jokes, you need to subscribe to the magazine and get your copy. But thank you very much, and hopefully that's some little insight into the wonderful world of motorcycling. Thank you.
So the next speaker then is Noel Willcox, who some of you will be aware runs a scaffolding company and has been involved in quite a protracted legal battle with TfL and the Mayor. And I'd like him to say a few words about where he's reached in that and what we can learn from how we engage with TfL as an organisation, which isn't always the most friendly of bodies.
Hello ladies and gents, nice to see you all. I'm Noel Willcox, business scaffold owner. As you can see, I've got all my hair and my teeth, yeah? So don't be alarmed. Ladies and gents, this goes back to October 2021, where my company vehicle was driving through the low emission zone and it racked up, wait for it, £11,500 of fines, of penalty charge notices. These were 7 penalty charge notices. Each one was £1,500 each. So I get a telephone call from the girl in the office. No, we've got a huge bill here from Transport for London. I was like, what? Transport for London? Why do I owe them any money? I said, what's it for? Low emission zone. Right, okay. So she briefly explained to me what it was. Me, with the curiosity that I've got, went straight down to Hayes, had a look at these signs. What information do these signs give you? They don't really give you any. Yeah? All it was an acronym of LEZ. So went back to the drawing boards, started doing a lot of studying, started reading about road traffic law, started reading the Department for Transport's authorisation for signage, and very quickly I realised something was quite sinister here. Okay, so what was sinister? These signs are not compliant with the legislation. I'm not going to go right into the legislation because it's very, very, very complex. So I've only got a short amount of time to give you an overview. So the adjudicator gave Transport for London 21 days to provide evidence that these signs were compliant with the legislation. 21 days, they never did it. So by default, the adjudicator ruled on my side by saying that this appeal was allowed. He also could not be satisfied that the LEZ was lawful. So he categorically stated no charge or penalty charge is payable. And he directed Transport for London, this was a direction, to refund all of my auto pay charges. Do you think Transport for London has repaid me? No. So they've completely gone against an adjudicator's decision. So the next process was, where do I go from here? Bearing in mind I'm doing this as a litigant in person, and I'll come to that point at the end. So what do? So I go to the small claims court. After a year-long battle with Transport for London, very aggressive, I must say, extremely aggressive, throwing lots of litigation at me, all sorts of things that I've never heard of in my life. I'm not a barrister, I'm not a lawyer, I've had to kind of really learn very, very fast. So went to court on the 20th of March this year, and they were trying to fight it in court, and the judge, fair play to him, he turned around and said to Transport for London, I am not interested in anything that you've got to say to me. So I was like, wow, because you hear all these stories of two-tier justice, you hear all of these stories that nothing's going to go in the favour of the little man. So, slight technicality, because the adjudicator had adjudicated 7 penalty charge notices, and the judge, because it was a small claims court, he said, I don't know what happens to those signs afterwards. So when we were aware of the charging scheme, that's when I signed up to the auto pay charges. So it was after the last penalty charge notice. So it was a minor technicality, and the judge said to me, and it really did stick with me, he said, you know what, Mr. Willcox, he said, if you've got the appetite for this, he said, keep going. And I thought, what does he mean by that? If you've got the appetite for this, keep going. The judge can clearly see that there's something very, very wrong here. Yeah, and he was an old school judge, he was very old school. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. Went back to the drawing board, where do I go from here? Okay, I need a court with a bigger jurisdiction. So, went to Central London County Court for a declaration that ULEZ and the low emission zone is unlawful, because I've looked at the ULEZ signs as well. Now you probably say, but yeah, no, the ULEZ, you didn't lose on the ULEZ. No, I didn't, but I was forced to incur debt because I had to change my fleet of vehicles to Euro 6 vehicles, because I didn't want thousands upon thousands of fines coming to my yard. But I forgot a very interesting part here. After the adjudicator's decision, 6 months later, Transport for London sent their thugs to my yard to try and collect the 11.5 grand. Now, there was a lot of scaffolders in that yard. How do you think that worked out for them? It didn't work out too well for them because they were stopping them from earning money. Let me tell you that. So, roll on time. I was in court very recently on the 3rd of September in the Central London County Court. And of course, Transport for London had not stuck to any of the court's deadlines throughout all of proceedings. So I thought, this has surely got to go in my favour, because if you breach court orders, it's done and dusted. It's all one-way traffic, the judge isn't interested. No, I got into court, I clearly stated, Judge, Transport for London have breached all of these court orders along proceedings, the judge was not interested. So at this point, I thought, Now I'm going to leave you guys with a little thought here. Throughout proceedings, there was a High Court judge that had been dealing with all of my proceedings. The morning I got into court, a retired judge was brought in to hear my case. This was all one-way traffic that went against me. So if you guys were to say to me, is there two-tier justice? I would say absolutely there is two-tier justice, because the legal argument, and I've saved the best till last, the legal argument that Transport for London gave, and they had a barrister in the court, their legal counsel, so they had a lawyer and legal counsel with them as well. They say, Judge, if you grant this declaration, millions will have to be paid back, and you will cripple public services, and you will bankrupt Transport for London. So the judge took that all on board, and the judge said to me that this has to be by way of a judicial review. A judicial review, I'm not interested in judicial review. These signs are unlawful. It's a simple question. Do these signs comply with the law, yes or no? That's a simple question. A judicial review looks at the process. I have no interest in what the decision-making process was of a judicial review. So have I been snaked by the judiciary? Absolutely, 100%. I have been snaked by the judiciary. Now, this is going to turn into a pretty big legal battle. I'm sure that it's going to be. So I've appealed that judge's decision. It is going to probably, I would say, go to the Court of Appeal, which is where they're going to want to kick this. And the reason why they're going to want to do this is that I'm just a litigant in person. They are a massive corporation with legal resources. They have money. They have literally thrown money after money at this. Why do they want this to get into the Court of Appeal? Because probably when it goes to case management, costs will be something in the region of about £250,000. So that is the way that they're going to get rid of me. But I'm not going to go away, ladies and gents. I've got a 30-year military career, mental robustness. No matter what they throw at me, I will not stop, because these signs are unlawful. And for me, they are scamming each and every motorist that is driving into London, and it's got to stop. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gents, is Grant Davis from the London Cab Drivers Club. If you'd like to come up and say a few words about your organisation, the members you represent, some of the challenges and some of the opportunities.
Good evening, nice to see you all here. As a Reform member, I'm really glad we're having this night tonight. It's a great step in the right direction. I find it a bit awkward talking to you like this as a cab driver, so if I was from here, what? No, I'm only joking. I'm only joking. I like that. Well, I'm not as good a speaker as that guy there. I thought he was exceptional, and well done, and well done. The cab trade's come up against TfL on more than one occasion, and like you said, with the two-tier system, they go to an appeal and all of a sudden it's completely, overturned the initial decision. But I wasn't going to make notes today, but I thought if I was just to stand here with no notes and talk to you about the state of London's roads, I'd probably end up getting so annoyed after a minute, I would just storm off, right? And Alex would say, come back, So I've got some notes here for you, and today I'll put this together, just so you get a sort of feel from where the cab trade's coming from in London, Okay, good evening everyone, my name is Grant Davis. I'm chairman of the London Cab Drivers Club, and I've been driving a London cab now for 37 years. That's 37 years watching this city change, 37 years of sitting in traffic, and 37 years of breathing in pollution while trying to earn an honest living. Tonight, I want to give you the view from the front seat, from someone who spends every working day navigating the chaos that London roads have become. let me be blunt, traffic congestion in London right now is worse than it has ever been in my nearly 4 decades behind the wheel, right? Journey times have gone off the scale. A journey that would take 15 minutes is taking 45 minutes, and that really, I'm not making that up. The amount of passengers I get in my taxi now who are looking at their watch and all they see is a line of brake lights and say, look, I'm going to have to jump out here, mate. I say, well, you know you're about 15 minutes away. They say, I can't wait the time and I can't pay what's on the fare. I mean, I've never give so many discounts in my life. I feel like a little cab driver, right? Because every time I say, look, you can't pay that. It's 21 quid on the clock, give me 15. Because we know what it should be. You know, we're not here to scam the public. We just want to give a good, honest service that we've always done, right? So, roads that were once flowing are now gridlocked for hours on end. And here's the dirty secret no one wants to talk about. All these measures, supposedly designed to reduce congestion and improve air quality, have made things worse, not better. Anyone can see that who are out in London. And the London Cab Drivers Club, we have a sort of motto. We've used it for years. And it's a moving city is a thriving city. A gridlocked city is a dying city. And I'm telling you tonight, London is dying. It's on its last legs regarding transport. All you ever hear from TfL is another new initiative. We're going to change that and we're going to do this. Today, I was driving over, or trying to drive over Lambeth Bridge. It was too beautiful, and I mean beautiful, right? Roundabouts on the south and on the north side. Beautiful, Victorian architecture, pineapples on them. Lovely, right? What have they done? They smashed them all away. Flattened the road. I think it's because you're hearing all this about driverless taxis, Waymo coming into London. Driverless taxis or driverless cars really struggle with roundabouts, right? So it's a coincidence that this mayor has brought in 20 miles an hour, which is the sort of maximum speed that these driverless taxis can get up to, right? Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, but driving a cab all these years and dealing with TfL, we're there on the side of caution that I think I might be right on this one. You just concentrate it in a few spaces, and that's what they're doing. You take away lanes that motorists have used for generations, and you have 2 lanes, now it's 1 lane, and then they say, look at the traffic, oh my God, we'll have to ban cars. They are creating the problem. It's so easy to see. You know, you just you force vehicles to sit idling, engines running, pumping out more emissions than if they were moving freely. It makes common sense, okay? And I've tried to do my bit for Londoners. I drive an electric cab, £75,000 plus interest. Eye-watering. I mean, unbelievable. Really unbelievable. And I did what they asked me. I bought into the clean air vision. But even my electric cab still relies on a petrol engine when the battery runs out. And before the electric cab was launched, they said to us, this is going to be a nirvana for cab drivers. It's going to do 200, 250 miles on a charge. People were thinking, well, hold on, let me work that out. The cab's expensive, but if I work out my fuel, I'm quids in. I'll recoup that money and be green. But my cab, I charge at home, but it does 60 miles, 65 in the winter. When I start to go to work, I put my heater on, maybe push the boat out a bit and put the rear heat winter on, and that the window seat, and that does it. You see the battery just going like that. It's a foursome. It really is. Calling it electric taxi, and I'm using the petrol engine, the generator to start. That's a fallacy, electric cabs, right? But and when I sit in gridlock caused by poorly planned road layouts, I'm just not moving. I'm just stuck behind another car in the jam, trying to make a living while my battery drains and my stress levels rise. Now let's talk about cycle lanes. And before anyone accuses me of being anti-cyclist, let me make this clear. We all want clean air, and I sit in it all day, every day. So obviously I want clean air to breathe in, right? My kids want me to breathe in air, right? So I last longer and can support my boys, yeah? Football tickets, nights out, you know what it's like, right? So we all want clean air, and we all want people to have transport choices. But what we've got in London is a disaster. Cycle lanes have been installed across the capital with barely any consultation, taking away crucial road space, and the result has been carnage for traffic flow. But here's what really gets my goat. While we motorists are persecuted for every minor infraction, while we're fined, monitored and regulated to within an inch of our lives, cyclists just seem to operate in a free-for-all zone. It really is. Red lights, optional for many cyclists. Riding on pavements, regular. Using mobile phones while riding. I see it all the time. And please don't get me started on e-bikes and e-scooters, particularly the ones that are used for food delivery apps. These riders weave through traffic, mount payments, go the wrong way, down one-way streets, and there really is zero enforcement. The commuter cyclists racing into town every morning are amongst the worst offenders, I'm afraid. High speed, aggressive riding with no regard for traffic laws or pedestrian safety. Where are their number plates? Where is the insurance requirement? Where is the accountability? We're told cycle lanes are about safety, but all I can see are dangerous cyclists every day and no one seems to care. There's one set of rules for motorists and apparently none for cyclists. Let me tell you about being a guinea pig. Black cab drivers were told to go electric, to be trailblazers in this great capital city. Yeah? The ones who would show London how clean transport could work. So we invested, like I said, £75,000 for a vehicle. And listen, that's not pocket change for a working cabbie. That's a mortgage-sized commitment, yeah? And the trouble is, that is the only cab allowed by TfL. And we're seeing terrible numbers of drivers leaving the trade. I mean, we're predicting that we're going to lose around 900 drivers a year. And the knowledge is dead. No one's coming on the knowledge because of weak regulation by TfL with the private hire industry. They've let Uber run wild, and they are. And TfL doesn't have the stomach to take Uber on. We've seen that. Uber's got their licence twice now, but that's only by going to the court, the High Court. They've been allowed to have their licence back. You know, all we've done is play by the rules, and we've been kicked from pillar to post. That's what my dad says. Anyway, I want to go on. That's not pocket change for a working cabbie, right? So where's the infrastructure? Where are the charging points we were promised? I spend my working day worrying about range, looking for available chargers, losing earning time when I charge. And when I can't find a charger or don't have time, well, like I said, there's always the petrol backup, and that kicks in. So much for zero emissions. And here's the really big kick in the teeth. While we were making this investment, while we were doing our bit for London and Londoners for clean air, what did we get? We got undermined by TfL with over 105,000 private hire vehicles flooding onto London's roads. Uber and others were allowed to saturate the market with diesel and petrol vehicles, creating more congestion, more competition and more pollution. The black cab trade did what was asked. We invested in new technology. We committed to clean air. And we were rewarded by having our business model destroyed by private hire who face nowhere near the same regulatory burden or environmental standards. Where's the fairness in that, I ask you? It isn't about business or regulations or politics. This is about health and quality of life. I sit in pollution and congestion 10 to 12 hours a day when I'm working. It's dangerous, it's stressful. The air quality in my cab, even though it's electric, is terrible. because I'm surrounded by other vehicles, all of us stuck in traffic, all pumping out emissions. The stress is real for the cab trade. The frustration is real. And it's not just me. It's every driver, every tradesperson, every professional trying to get across London just to do their job. We're suffering under policies that sound good in theory, but fall spectacularly in practice. Just to conclude, London's motorists have been abused, used and ignored for far too long. We've been cash cows for congestion charge, ULEZ fees. We've been experimented on with cycle lanes and traffic schemes that don't really work. We've been told to invest in electric vehicles without being given any infrastructure to actually make them viable. It's time someone stood up for us. It's time someone asked why cyclists seem to get a free pass while we're getting hammered. It's time someone questioned whether these policies are actually achieving anything except making life harder and more expensive for normal working people. On that note, I thank you for listening to my tirade. Thank you.
Rather than having a sort of formal Q&A, because time is starting to tick against us, and we have some food that has been delivered, not by Deliveroo, but by the team here at City Hall. I'd like to thank our four speakers for their contributions to the discussion. But we are going to have some food, and everyone feel free to mention any topics, any questions you want to have with any of the panellists during that, and I think that's probably the best way to proceed now, if you're happy with that. But once again, thank you very much for our four speakers. Thank you for the team at City Hall for putting on the spread. Thank you hugely for Ian for helping organise from my team, and thank you most of all for coming.